What's good, y'all? It's your boy Schmug, and I'm back at it again. The long-awaited, the anticipated part 2 of episode 1 of Schtories Wit Schmug. So kick back, get schmacked, and stay with your boy. This is my first 420 / my first time getting arrested. Before we proceed, you know I gotta hit you with the disclaimer. So please do not attempt to recreate or reenact anything you may hear in these stories, and I'm not admitting or confessing to anything you may hear in these stories. I'm simply telling tales from my past that may or may not have happened in an entertaining fashion. So take it with a grain of salt, a puff of smoke, and let's dive into it. I did also want to make one minor correction before we got right back into where we left off. So this story actually takes place the following year. That's going to be 2013. So I was a junior in high school. I was 16, not 15. I went back on the calendar and took a look, and I realized 420 didn't land on a Saturday for 2012, but the following year it did. So that's where my mistake was. No worries, minor hiccup. Let's pick up where we left off. So here's the world's fastest recap to bring y'all up to speed if you have not seen part 1. So me and the homies Derek, Dimitri, and Mo for a short period of time were on our way to Derek's crib to have the Cypher of the Century. We were one block from Derek's crib. The Cypher was in sight. We could see it, but we never saw it. New York's grimiest cut our party short, and we got thrown in the back of the patty and brought to the precinct. So they open up the doors, light peers into the space and illuminates the back of the patty. It was so dark in there, me and the homies could not see a thing. And this is where it got a little real, you know, you're shackled, you're being led out of the back of the patty by a bunch of detectives. But at this point, like I said, they got it's almost like they dropped that tough shit, you know what I'm saying? The whole tough facade was gone. Immediately after they pulled us out the back of the patty, the officer that was getting compared to my homie Dimitri tries catcalling on a shorty that's walking in front of us before we even walk into the precinct. So we all have a good laugh because he got rejected, and then we go inside. Now, not only did bro have the audacity to try to pick up a shorty outside his place of work with 3 fugitives in hand, but he was also rejected while doing so. So that alone eased the tension enough where me and Dimitri were already at a point where we were starting to joke about this shit. Derek, not so much, because bro was panicking from start to finish. He did have the largest quantity in his possession, and at this time, that was guaranteed. You're going to bookings, my boy, regardless. His situation was a little different than ours. Basically, they could have hit him with, and I think they did, it was intent to sell, obviously. He had a whole half pre-packaged, ready to go in small quantities. It was over for bro. He was going to bookings. He could have definitely argued personal use, but it's a little difficult when the boys have observed you slinging dimes out your shorts on the fucking basketball court all day. Gets a little tricky. So he had no defense there, and that's where that stood. So we're being led into the precinct, and remember I noted this felt like forever because it did. They took their sweet time driving to the precinct, and we found out why. The last detective walks in the precinct. This man is clutching 2 freshly made large pizzas. I'm not kidding. You can smell the freshness of these pizzas. This man stopped and got them lunch. Bro stopped us for za, then went and got himself some za. I digress. Just remember these pizzas because they're going to be important later on in the story. Now that they're all in the precinct, they walk us to this smaller back area. It's a single cell with enough room for, a decent amount of people, but there was nobody else in the cell at all. And the bathroom was separate outside of the cell on the side. So if we wanted to take a piss, we deadass had to ask one of the officers to open the fucking cell and let us take a piss. L circumstances, considering we wound up spending 3 to 4 hours in this cell and the majority of our 420 holiday. They gave us the typical rundown. They took our shoelaces, they took our mugshots, and they took our fingerprints digitally. Keep in mind, despite the entire ordeal that took place, we did still get to smoke 1 blunt. So me and Dimitri were a little faded. It was still kind of funny, giddy. We were trying to make the best of a bad situation. And then the cop that was taking our mugshots was cracking jokes the whole time. Bro was just having a fun time at this point. Even going as far as saying, "Smile, you're going to be on the local Instagram." He was just having a good time. He even also went as far as trying to give us a bit more insight as to what was going to happen after we did get released. And he explained what was known as a desk appearance ticket to us. So at this time, for possession, we were in a point where, we weren't legal, but it was decriminalized enough where we could be released from the precinct depending on how much was in our possession, our age, etc. And I think this is why they let our homie Mo go. He was younger than me by 1 year, so that would make him 15. I was 16. Dimitri was 17, and so was Derek. So we were all in the sweet spot of an adolescent offender. Essentially, back then, what the state of New York did for quite some time is they would charge youths as adults if they were aged 16, 17, etc. We were one of 2 states for the longest time that did this. This didn't change until 2018, I believe. Don't hold me to that. But enough about the law. Let's get back on track. So we finished getting our mugshots taken. We're all sitting in the cell side by side. There's nobody else there but us. Me and Dimitri start cracking jokes, and to pass the time, we wind up cracking out an hour-long freestyle session. We started freestyle rapping for a straight hour. While Derek sat there in despair, me and Dimitri laid the meanest bars of 2013. Now, the Selly Cypher of 2013 was interrupted by that same cop who was taking our mugshots an hour prior, and he was here to crack yet another joke and poke fun at us while we were locked up. More specifically, this was geared towards my homie Dimitri. Now, sidebar so you can understand the cop's joke initially, me and Dimitri were fully tapped into Plinder and Karmaloop. If you don't know what Plinder or Karmaloop was for that time, my boy, you were missing out. That was the fucking host of every underground streetwear brand that I could remember, all on one website, always dirt cheap, always came with something wrong, but it's okay because it was drip. Contrary to popular belief, it was on this website that I was first introduced to the D9 Reserve brand. Now, shout out D9 and much love to all the homies up in the Bronx, but back then, I don't even think this store existed in New York. At this time, they had us in an absolute chokehold as far as the online sales market goes, and they were killing it with the designs. All I'm gonna say is you were not there for Toqi the Bear at all. You don't even know about that. You don't know about the faded snapbacks, the re-up snapbacks, the cartoon hands rolling up the splee, the fashionably medicated lifestyle. All of their clothes were geared towards the stoners and the smokers, and it was all fire. Now, me personally, my favorite design from back then, and I still have the shirt somewhere, was the Dead President's shirt. I'm going to put it up on the screen so you have an idea of what I was working with. Quality materials, quality design, and they had these nice little touches where the tags would double. So you'd flip one tag, and on the other side, there'd be a picture of a weed leaf. You flip the D9 tag on the bottom, it shows a blunt lit. You can't go wrong with that. Now, why am I giving you a small history lesson about the D9 Reserve brand? I'm gonna get there. So with these clothes, as I said, it was geared towards the smokers. So they had a very special tag that came on these clothes, and that was the stanky pouch. Now, that was a smell-proof bag that doubled as a tag and was attached to all of their clothes. You heard that correct. They were giving you a free smell-proof contraption with every purchase. Now, my homie Dimitri actually ripped his pouch, but he still had the pouch in his pocket for some reason, so it was in his possessions when we got locked up. So the cop that was taking our mugshots and giving us all that info, he walks back into the room. He's holding the stanky pouch up in the air. He looks at Dimitri and he goes, "You know, you're gonna have a way bigger problem on your hands, right? I seen this pouch is from a brand that's located in California. It looks like you might have moved your pack across state lines. We're going to have to contact the DEA. Now, when he's saying this, mind you, I'm still fried, but I'm kind of like getting sober. But even in my partially fried state of mind, I knew this kind of sounded far-fetched, right? But for some reason, he caught my boy Dimitri on a good day, and he got a little nervous for like 20 minutes, but then he let that shit pass, because not only was this officer cheesing from start to finish trying to tell this story and scare my homie, but they didn't even find his weed in that pouch. They found that pouch empty in his pocket with nothing in it. Realistically, no grounds to stand on, but we were also just teenagers, low-key fried, so we didn't really know too much. It also didn't help that we already knew for sure that Dimitri's mom or his family, somebody at his house, was called, because he had no form of identification on him when we got stopped, and that's a big no-no when you get stopped by the police. They need to identify you somehow. I thankfully had my student ID from high school. I guess that was enough for them to not call my mom at all, because later that evening I wound up finding out that she was never contacted. But we'll get there. So his mom was actually at work. His sister got the call but had to tell their mom because she needed to know where his passport was. Bro did not have an ID at all. Only a passport. They had to retrieve that passport, then walk that shit over to the precinct to prove his identity. In doing so, not only did his mom find out because she needed to find out where the passport was, but his sister also took the initiative to fucking tell everyone. So by the time we got out the schlammy, there was several Free the Bros posts on social media. So Officer Cuck leaves the room eventually after his joke does not land, but he does return a short while after this to begin our release process. So he starts with my homie Dimitri, he leads him out of the cell, brings him to this smaller room in the front of the precinct, and once they're done processing him, it's my turn. So they retrieve me and then they lead me into this smaller room. Dimitri has now finished being processed for release at this point. They gave him back his shoelaces. He's sitting in the lobby and he's relacing his sneakers. So I enter this room and I'm greeted by every single officer that stopped us that day. I'm talking every single cop that hopped out of a car was crammed into this small ass room. We got 8 oversized dickheads in a room built for 2. On the table lied my hopes and dreams. Nah, I'm just kidding, but it did have my desk appearance ticket, my cell phone, my house keys, and more importantly, right beside my belongings is a large cheese pizza. This shit is now 4 hours old and was a premeditated ploy by the police to get us to give up the plug, okay? Let me get into this real quick because it was fucking hysterical. Now I'm gonna start by stating the obvious, okay? Me nor Dimitri give up any information about our homie Tony. And at this point, despite how much we did or didn't know about the law, you know enough to realize if they're handing you your belongings, your shoelaces, and your paperwork, you are free to go, my boy. You don't need to speak to them any further. You don't need to give them any additional information. At this point, you are being released. So let's backtrack to when we first got to the precinct. I watched that cop walk in there with 2 large pies, fresh and hot, directly from the pizzeria. We fast forward to this moment before release, and 1 pie remains. That means they ate 1 pie on their lunch break and saved the second pizza for the play. So as I'm gathering my belongings and awaiting my paperwork, the leader of the cuck circle finally addresses me. He leans in, he opens up the pizza. He says, "Go ahead, grab a slice. My name is Flacco." Now I'm gonna keep it a buck. Me and Dimitri both grabbed a slice of that cold ass pizza. Like I said before, we had hours-long munchies. We were dying internally. My stomach was eating itself. So, brother, I'm taking that cold slice as a parting gift, but we owe you nothing. So while I'm demolishing this slice, Flacco leans in and is like, "I need something for the weekend. You gonna help me out or what?" Like, come on, fam. Come on, dog. Bro hit me with the stereotypical, "I need something for the weekend." But this is where it gets even more funny. So, brief sidebar so you're up to speed. My entirety of high school, I didn't have a real cell phone. I had the OBZ trap phone, okay? I had the track phone. This is the free phone you got if you got EBT. My mom got EBT. She gave it to me. I did not have a real phone, but I'll tell you what it did do. It made calls and it sent texts, even if it took me 5 minutes to type out a single text message. And I used this to cop a many dime bags in my day. Now, what I would also do with this phone is intentionally let it die to avoid speaking to my mom, go home late, and handle it when I got there. Don't act like you didn't already also pull this move. We all did this at least once, and this was my go-to so I could stay out late. Let that shit die. But this was also due in part to the literal model and make of that free cell phone. Now I'm going to put a picture up on the screen to give you an idea and help you visualize what I was working with in high school. This was a silver flip phone with a charger like no other. I have never seen this charger since, and only for this phone ever in my day, personally. So getting back to it, Officer Flacco leaned in and said he needed something for the weekend. I look him in the eyes, I let out a chuckle, and I say, "Officer, I couldn't help you if I wanted to. My phone is dead." My phone is dead. Can't do much, I'm sorry. And for the first time, another officer in the room starts to speak. It is larger Officer Cuck sitting beside Officer Flacco, a large Italian man with his hat backwards, and he grabs a box full of phone chargers, looks at me, shakes the box, and says, "Oh, don't worry, we got chargers for everybody's phone." So I look at him and I say, "Yeah, I promise you, you do not have the charger for this cell phone." So he looks at the charger port of my phone, and then he deadass took this as a challenge. This man sat there and picked apart every single charger in their box. And as he gets to the last charger in that box, he realizes they really don't have one for my phone. So he looks up, he looks at the other officers, then he looks at me, and all he says is, "You weren't kidding." And everyone in the room proceeds to laugh at me for a brief moment about my cell phone choice. I got cooked by Officer Cuck for rocking with the trackie, but it's okay. Keep in mind, I'm still waiting for my paperwork, so I have to sit here and deal with these dickheads until they finally present it to me. And at this point, they finally give up. They realize they're probably not getting much from me. So Flacco's last ditch effort, this man writes down his name and a cell phone number on a fucking post-it, slides it to me, and says, when you charge that phone up, you give me a call. Again, brother, this isn't a movie. This man was moving like it was an episode of fucking Narcos. Like, I had less than a dime on me. I'm not, like, we're not moving weight, sir. I don't know what to tell you, but whatever. He finally takes out my desk appearance ticket. He signs it. He hands it to me, he explains the process and my court date, and I am finally allowed to head to the lobby, relace my sneakers, and get the fuck up out of there. And I do just that. I sit down beside Dimitri. At this point, obviously, he already finished lacing up his sneakers a millennium ago because they had me in there for close to 30 minutes trying to pump me for information. Like, come on, bro, and you're holding my paperwork. I'm trying to get out of there. It's been a while. You're doing too much. But anyway. Now, after those circumstances, I couldn't even wait for us to leave the lobby. I outright look at Dimitri. We both fucking laugh our asses off for a good 2 minutes, right there in the precinct lobby, because the whole day was just ridiculous, but I could not wait. So I had to ask him if they also tried to pull the same pizza play with him to give up information on our homie Tony, and obviously he confirmed they tried to do the very same. What's funny about Dimitri is he never really had a cell phone back then. He had an iPod that needed Wi-Fi, and that was dead also. So the cops were probably just over it entirely. Their whole little pizza plate didn't work. They let that pizza sit for hours for no reason. Good looks on the slice. But that shit was ass anyway. For the first time in hours, me and Dimitri are finally stepping outside of the precinct. We open the door. We walk outside. It's basically nighttime outside now. It's about 6 p.m. The brisk breeze hits me in the face. And I'm ready to go home and face the music, honestly. I'm under the impression my mom was called, right? Until Dimitri changed my mind with some quick insight. He quickly reminded me, it's still 4:20. My cell phone's already dead. Even if my mom was contacted, my phone is still dead. There's no way to reach back out. And I might as well close out the day with a scythe to relieve myself from the stress endured by these circumstances. And just like that, your boy was back in the game. I stayed out for like an additional 3 to 4 hours this day because the festivities were not fulfilled. We still needed to get schmacked, and we did just that. I'm actually saving a small portion of this story for a future installment called Scumbag Stories, because we didn't have any money left at this point. And as a youth, I'm not gonna lie, there were a few instances that me and the homies pulled some real scumbag maneuvers to acquire some pack or some payment to acquire that pack. It was not uncommon amongst my friends, and I did it a few times, but realistically, thinking back on it, it was pretty scummy of me, I'm not gonna lie. And because there are quite a few instances where there was a little scummy activity at play, I'm gonna save all of those and combine them for their own installment of Schtories Wit Schmug down the line. So let's fast forward a little bit through this tale and bring it to a close. Let's just say me and Dimitri did wind up securing pack that evening. We may or may not have included a third party, and that third party may or may not have gotten scammed. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I almost regretted the scythe a little bit and staying that long, because all the scythe did was make me dumb paranoid on the train. I'm talking, I was on the train, long ass train ride too. It felt like the longest train ride of my life, and I wanted it to, because I needed to know what I was going to tell my mom, how I was going to explain the situation. I eventually came to the high determination that I was going to say someone else in my friend group got arrested for possession, but they arrested the whole group. In my head, that was solid. That was solid. That was my reason. That was my story. I'm sticking to it. That's it. Again, keep in mind, my mom knows I smoke at this point, but our agreement was that I keep it in the crib, and I never did this. I was siphoning heavy with the gang outside on the regular. Come on now. We're smoking big pack with the gang. But I digress. So I finally step off my stop, Broadway Junction, on the A train, the second train I had to take to get home in East New York, Brooklyn. Now I'm slowly walking home, taking my sweet ass time, because I really just don't want to face this situation. And I'm just processing the fact that, like, yo, I really got arrested today for pack. And it's not the only time. This is just the first occurrence. I got a few more stories to tell, and they are all related to pack or possession or smoking somewhere I shouldn't. And it's really ridiculous. Like, even being a teenager, I get that part, yeah. But to have to sit through the whole process, get processed, get fingerprinted, have my mugshot taken for a plant. It's a little wild to me. It's insane. And I'm just grateful that we've reached a point that we do not have to deal with this in our state anyway. Free all the guys that are still locked up on a federal level. But yes, the time has finally come. I approach my apartment building. I take out my keys. I put them in the front door. I open it real slow. I head up the stairs as slow as I possibly can. I put my keys in my front door. I open it up. I don't get but 2 steps inside before I see my mom standing there, and boy, does she have some questions. So we come to a standstill. I'm looking at her. She's looking at me. I'm looking at her. She's looking at me. And I'm trying to gauge how she feels right now. You feel me? Like, I'm trying to see how she feels right now. Until she finally blurts out, "Where the fuck you been?" Now, my response to this is what fucked me up. I look her in the eye and I say, "They didn't call you yet?" And I watch things start to move in her head. And I can tell she was never called by the police. I just gave myself up by accident. You see, this was just another one of those "where the fuck were yous," as in, why was your phone dead for several hours and you didn't text me or call? Realistically, I gave myself up by asking my mom if they had called her yet. Because once I said that, I was in too deep. I couldn't backtrack. I didn't know how to backtrack. And I just kind of gave her the story that I formulated on the train in my head. I was like, "Oh, one of my homies got caught. They stopped us out of nowhere and they just took in the whole group." I don't think she believed me, but she let it rest. She didn't really fight me too much on it that night, surprisingly. Which it was a little weird considering I had just been arrested for the first time. But it is what it is. Your boy made it out scot-free, still got smacked, and had himself a story to tell. That being said, you know the deal, you know the vibe. Like, comment, share, subscribe. It's Schmug himself and I stay high. I'ma catch y'all later. See you in the next one.